Hello and welcome to the New Jersey chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Capital Day presentation. This is our first ever virtual advocacy event and was recorded on April 27th, 2020, and is being made available to all new volunteers interested in advocacy. Our speakers for today's presentation will be Elizabeth Clemens, the New Jersey Area Director, Wendy Sepsic, the New Jersey Chapter Board Chair, and Chelsea Dumond, Manager of Public Policy, Events, and Projects. Here's what you can expect from today's presentation. First, you'll hear opening remarks from the New Jersey Chapter Board Chair, Wendy Sepsic. You'll get an overview of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's history, mission, partnerships, and priorities. You'll be introduced to advocating for mental health and suicide prevention on a local and national level. We'll review the current legislative priorities in New Jersey and walk through the steps you need to take action. Finally, we'll take your questions through the live chat feature. But first, let's hear from Wendy.
Hello. I am so thankful that you are interested in advocacy and are participating in our New Jersey State Capital Day event. My name is Wendy Sepsic, and I am currently serving as chair for the New Jersey chapter of AFSP and as the chair of our advocacy committee. Advocacy is a critical piece to reducing suicide. I understand that many people are intimidated when they think about advocating, but I assure you, your voice matters and your legislators want to hear from you. I hope by the end of this program, you will feel comfortable and confident about advocating for suicide prevention. Each of us can become stronger advocates. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Established in 1987, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is a voluntary health organization that gives those affected by suicide a nationwide community empowered by research, education, and advocacy to take action against this leading cause of death. AFSP is the leading nonprofit dedicated to saving lives and bringing hope to those affected by suicide. AFSP creates a culture that is smart about mental health by engaging in the following core strategies: funding scientific research, educating the public about mental health and suicide prevention, advocating for public policies in mental health and suicide prevention, and supporting survivors of suicide loss and those affected by suicide in our mission. Today, the AFSP combines science and grassroots efforts and gives those affected by suicide a nationwide movement of over 1 million people with chapters in all 50 states. Here at AFSP, we have 5 core values that we make sure to incorporate into our everyday lives, and we hope that you will as well. The first is passion. We are fueled by the desire to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. Community. We are a diverse community, made stronger by our common determination to stop suicide. Harmony. We all have a role to play in preventing suicide. By working together, there are no limits to what we can achieve. Impact. We strive to achieve bold goals in our pursuit of saving lives and work to strengthen mental health in all we do. And well-being. We lead by example in practicing self-care and supporting healthy behaviors for ourselves and one another's. And I'd be remiss to not take this opportunity to emphasize on our well-being one, especially during this time that we're all experiencing. While AFSP is many things, there are a few things that we are not. We are not a crisis center. We partner with the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and recommend those who are in crisis or know someone who is in crisis to call the hotline at 273-8255 or dial 911. AFSP does not run its own support groups, and chapters are not support groups. We do help support groups by providing a list of those in the state when requested, and also provide AFSP literature and resources to individuals who run the support groups in New Jersey. AFSP does not make grants to other organizations. We do invest in research. Much of what is known about suicide comes from AFSP-funded studies. Our studies open up new areas of inquiry and help set the national research agenda. We cannot fight for a world without suicide alone. We count on our partners from across the country to help us create a culture that is smart about mental health, and where we can continue to fight for a day where no one will die by suicide. As you'll see on your screen, there's just a few of our partners listed. As I mentioned earlier, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, Mental Health of America, the Mighty, NAMI, and many, many more. Why we fight for the cause. Mental health is becoming better understood as we are actively reducing the stigma. We are seeing a shift in how individuals and the nation speak about mental health and suicide, and there is continued growth in collaboration in this field. According to a recent AFSP-sponsored Harris poll, 94% of Americans think that suicide is preventable. Also, 94% of Americans would do something to help if someone close to them was thinking about suicide. Really take a minute to let those numbers sink in, and know that by being here today with us, each of you are a part of that 94%. By joining in today, you are sending the message that our cause of suicide prevention is important to you. You are showing others that suicide, which is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death among 10 to 34-year-olds, can no longer be ignored. Suicide is a health issue that affects all of us. As a community, we know we have much to do as we lose more than 48,000 lives every year in this country. While we are saddened by these deaths, we see them as a call to action for our nation to do more to prevent suicide. Suicide deaths and attempts cost $69 billion in combined work loss and medical costs. It is estimated that there are 25 suicide attempts for each death, or more than 1 million suicide attempts per year. In the US and worldwide, spending for research on suicide is considerably less than research spending for any other diseases and conditions. How we fight for the cause. AFSP is leading the way in suicide prevention research. As I mentioned earlier, much of what is known about suicide comes from AFSP-funded studies. Our studies open up new areas of inquiry and help set the national research agenda. Thanks to our donors and supporters such as yourselves, last year we invested in 26 new research grants, totaling $5.3 million, including 2 focus grants, which totaled over $2.7 million. Over the past 5 years, AFSP has awarded $21.7 million in research funding. Many of you have found AFSP through our Out of the Darkness walks. Our walks are how many people learn about our organization for the first time, welcoming them into a supportive and loving community, and mobilizing them in a movement to stop suicide. The friendships formed by the people who walk are deeply personal and can last a lifetime. Last year alone in New Jersey, we held 17 Out of the Darkness community walks. We held 17 Out of the Darkness walks, 15 community walks, which take place in the fall, and 2 campus walks, which took place in the spring. And in last year alone, we saw over 11,000 registered walkers and raised almost $1.2 million. Through our International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day and Healing Conversations program, AFSP provides support year-round to those who have been affected by suicide. In New Jersey, we work with partners to host 7 International Survivors of Suicide Loss Days throughout the state and are always looking to add more locations so we can make sure we serve our entire state. The International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day is a national event that takes place the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Healing Conversations gives those who have lost someone to suicide the opportunity to talk with experienced volunteers. These AFSP volunteers, who are themselves suicide loss survivors, offer understanding and guidance in the weeks and months following a suicide death. Through educational programs such as Talk Saves Lives and It's Real College Students in Mental Health, we teach schools, communities, and workplaces how best to prevent suicide and how to create a culture that is smart about mental health. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are giving both Talk Saves Lives and It's Real as virtual presentations. If this is something that you are interested in, please reach out to me and we can discuss more. Our chapter will continue to host these educational programs virtually until we can be together again in person. The interactive screening program connects individuals to mental health services before crises emerge. ISP is an online program utilized by mental health services at institutions of higher education, including medical and professional degree schools, hospitals and health systems, law enforcement agencies, and other organizations and workplaces throughout their employee assistance programs, also known as EAPs. Even when people know available mental health services, sometimes shame, fear, and embarrassment often prevent them from seeking help. Through a customized program website platform, ISP provides a safe and confidential way for individuals to take a brief screening for stress, depression, and other mental health conditions and receive a personal response from a program counselor within the mental health services available to them. Individuals can anonymously communicate with the program counselor to receive recommendations, feedback, and support for connecting to available mental health services. Despite the fact that more is being done today to prevent suicide than any other time in our history, the rate of suicide continues to rise in the United States. Led by the largest suicide prevention organization in the United States, with guidance from top minds in the field and dynamic data modeling, the AFSP has determined the programs, policies, and interventions that will prevent as many suicides as possible. Project 2025 is the collaborative effort to implement and scale these strategies nationwide. 4 critical areas have been identified to save the most lives in the shortest amount of time. And those 4 critical areas are firearms, healthcare systems, emergency department, and correction systems. At the local level, with local programs and events in all 50 states, AFSP chapters are at the forefront of suicide prevention. They create a culture that is smart about mental health through education and community programs, research and advocacy, and support for those affected by suicide. Our chapters engage with families, mental health professionals, community and local business leaders, school administrators, and others interested in preventing suicide. Based on the 2018 CDC data, New Jersey loses one person every 11 hours to suicide. Suicide is the 13th leading cause of death in New Jersey, the second leading cause of death for those ages 10 to 34. While we are saddened by these deaths, we see them as a call to action and for us to do more to prevent suicide in New Jersey. It is now my pleasure to introduce Chelsea Dumont, the Manager of Public Policy Events and Projects, to speak more about AFSP's advocacy program.
Thanks, Liz. And on behalf of the National Public Policy Office, I just want to thank everybody for participating in the webinar today. It's unfortunate that we couldn't meet in person, but I'm glad that we're able to engage everyone virtually. So first, why do we advocate? By advocating for the issues that you care about, including suicide prevention, mental health, you individually can make a difference. AFSP provides advocates the opportunity to share their story and make connections on the federal and state level, and provides an opportunity and a platform to email legislators directly, as well as advocate in person at events locally around the country and in Washington, D.C. AFSP advocates receive emails from the Public Policy Office on the issues that need their support. Advocates are directed to the AFSP Action Center at the link that you see here, and you can email your legislator in as little as 2.5 minutes. So this is an example of what you'll see when you go onto the Action Center. It's a pre-programmed letter to the elected officials, either on the state or the local level, that are populated with your contact information and then personalized as you wish. You can take action today for legislation that we'll be discussing later that needs your support in New Jersey. So if you want to do more than support legislation virtually, you can also advocate in person at a state Capitol Day event, which typically are held at state Capitol Days across the country each spring. Chapters also select advocates to attend AFSP's national advocacy event that we hold in Washington, D.C. each June. These events provide an opportunity for advocates to share their story and create lasting connections with legislators, their staff, the community, and your fellow AFSP advocates. So first, a few lawmaking basics. Where does legislation come from? It comes from legislators themselves based on their personal experience and passions. It also comes from you all as advocates and constituents. And then finally, it comes from AFSP and other national mental health and suicide prevention organizations that work directly with legislators to write new policy and provide resources to support future legislation. So as you begin your advocacy journey, it's important to know what resources you have at your disposal. State legislative websites help you identify your legislator and their contact information. You can also search for legislation that has been introduced, what laws have already been enacted, and find what relevant events and advocacy opportunities may be coming to your area. On the federal level, you can find all of that information at congress.gov. And keep in mind that members of Congress also have district offices within their states, so you don't necessarily need to travel to DC to connect with them in person. So how does a bill become a law? Once a legislator has an idea for a bill that they introduce it, and then it's assigned to a relevant committee. For example, if we work with a senator to introduce a bill to have all teachers trained in suicide prevention, that bill would go to the Senate Education Committee. The committee then has an opportunity to review and edit the bill before it sends it back to the floor for a full vote. If the bill is voted on favorably, it will go to the other house. So our teacher training bill, for example, if voted on favorably by the full Senate, would be moved to the House and then go through the same committee review and floor voting process. Only when a bill has been voted on favorably in both houses can it go to the governor, who then signs it into law. The governor also has the opportunity to veto the bill and send it back to the House and Senate for further edits. So if you're interested in learning more about the specific policy areas that AFSP works on both the federal and the state level, I encourage you to look at our public policy priority page that you see here. It can also be found online at afsp.org/priorities. There you will find issue briefs that give an in-depth look at each priority and also an outline of what legislation has been passed in your state in each area. You can also visit afsp.org/advocacy resources to view our sample meeting videos and previous webinars on some of our top policy issues. So through the AFSP Action Center, beyond sending emails to your legislators, you can also take a look at what bills we're tracking on the federal and the state level. You can see where a specific bill is within that legislative process, see if AFSP supports that bill, and then go further on to take action and email your legislators. So how do you make that initial connection with a legislator or their staff? It's important for us as advocates to try and position ourselves as resources for a legislative office. There are several ways to make the initial connection, and that's based on your preferred communication style. So maybe you're great at social media, maybe you want to meet with legislators or their staff in person and share your story, or maybe email is your preferred method. AFSP supports our advocates in all of these communication areas. So no matter how you want to make the connection, when you speak to a legislator or their staff, it's important that you introduce yourself and share why the cause is so important to you, offer to be a resource for them in the future, and then finally follow through on that promise and answer any questions that they have and continue to reach out in the future. So when you're speaking to a legislator or their staff, it's important to be polite and thank them for the time. You also want to be mindful of the language that you use and be brief when sharing your story in connection to the cause. You want to think of it as an elevator speech. In your communication, you likely will get questions that you may not know the answer to, and that is absolutely okay. You'll just want to let them know that, hey, I don't know the answer to that question right now, and I'll connect with my local chapter as well as the National Public Policy Office and get an answer to you. This provides an excellent excuse to maintain communication with that office and further position yourself as a resource. So just like there's lots of ways to make the initial connection, there's lots of ways to stay connected with your lawmakers on both the state and the federal level throughout the year. So I encourage you again to visit your state legislative website as well as visiting congress.gov. Visit the websites of your personal legislators and sign up to receive their newsletters, follow their social media pages, and find an opportunity to meet with them in the future at their capital or their district office. If you have questions now or in the future about advocacy and the specific policy priorities that we work on, I encourage you to reach out to our office simply by email. We are reachable at advocacy@afsp.org, and Wendy or Liz can also connect you to us. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, oh, Liz, do you
Sorry,
want to...
Wendy. I was just going to introduce you, so go ahead.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Chelsea. So I hope you guys really, I think that really gives such a fantastic overview. Makes it, you see how easy and doable this is, how much support that we get. Liz had sent out the issue brief. Hopefully you've all received it. Maybe you didn't look at it yet, but I really encourage you to take the time to look at it. There's over 20 bills currently being looked at, and I would really encourage you to read it over, see if any of them speak to you. You want to highlight the issues that you're passionate about. In this issue brief, there are bills that deal with suicide prevention in education. There's some dealing with first responders. There's some with higher education, some that deal with clinicians. So I encourage you to look at it, see what you're passionate about. If you have feelings about another bill that needs to be drafted, that's okay too. So you can get in touch with us, get in touch with the Public Policy Office, get in touch with your legislators, let them know the issues that you feel are important. When you talk to your legislators, you want to offer to be a resource for them. Again, this doesn't mean you have to have all the answers, but very often they're looking to have somebody that they can connect to if they want to push a bill forward. Is there somebody, a constituent that they can talk to that might be willing to come testify why it's important? So you want to offer to be that resource for your legislator. You want to share information about the chapter. Let them know that you're not in this fight alone. You have a chapter, you have a national organization behind you. And also, when you meet, promise to follow up and follow through. So don't make it a one-time connection. Keep that connection going. You really want to develop relationships. I'm just going to highlight a few of the bills. As I said, there are over 20 in this issue brief, but here's a couple that we looked through that I just want to highlight. This one deals with suicide prevention training for healthcare professionals. I know I was shocked when I learned that this is something that has to be legislated. It really, I thought, was amazing that mental health clinicians, people working in the field, are not required to have training in suicide risk assessment and treatment, and that it needs to be legislative. So I feel very strongly about this bill at the state level. I'm very grateful to our sponsors. You can take a look at the bottom here. It says who's sponsoring it. Maybe it's one of your legislators. Please, if you feel that this is also important, make sure you reach out to them. If your legislator isn't a sponsor, does not mean don't reach out to them. We actually still need the votes, and maybe they would want to sign on as a co-sponsor. So this would require clinicians to receive training as a condition of licensure. So it's a really, really important bill. This next one deals with law enforcement training. Again, this is a critical bill because very often when it comes to mental health issues, our first responders are the first ones called out. If somebody was having a problem at home, they may call a first responder. And it's really important that these first responders have training so that they can understand what they're walking into. Because sadly, very often when somebody is struggling with a mental health issue, their behavior may be very difficult. And depending upon how our first responders deal with it, they could really do a good job of de-escalating a situation. But they need the training, they need the support. So bills like this are really, really important. So this is another one that I would encourage you contacting your legislators to support. This one deals for expanded suicide prevention training for educators. Currently, our school teachers in New Jersey are required to have training every few years in suicide risk and suicide prevention. However, what we know from the research is that all gatekeepers are important. Sometimes a kid won't go to a teacher, but they may go to a coach. They may even have a connection to the woman who works in the lunchroom. So it's really important that all school personnel that have contact with our youth are trained to know what to look for and how to connect our students to the support that they need. So that's what this bill does. And this last bill that we're going to highlight deals with expanding what we require for mental health awareness and suicide prevention in higher ed. Currently, our higher institutions of higher education are requiring that our mental health clinicians have training and are available for students 24/7. However, again, we know that that's not comprehensive enough. This bill will require that faculty and staff will have to have training so that they can recognize signs of depression, and they'll know how to learn to refer students to mental health and crisis services. It also, which I think is also critically important, is it will train resident assistants annually on signs of depression. These residence assistants are the ones that are living in the dorms with the kids. So it's really important that they also receive the support and the training to help kids that may be struggling. Now we're just going to look at some action items, things that you can do right when you get off of this call today. First, create your personal vignette. What this is something that we're going to send you a template after. It's something that you can create and that you can leave behind with your legislator or send to your legislator. It's a way to make that connection. In mine, I choose to put a picture of my son. I lost my son to suicide when he was 16. So I put his picture, but that's a personal choice. I didn't have to do that. I could have put a picture of myself, why I advocate, and it's really what you're comfortable with. And then you share the part of your story, again, that you're comfortable with. You don't have to feel pressure to overshare. You could just say you just think suicide prevention is an important issue. So it's just something personal, a leave behind, because very often when you walk out of that room, you want there to be something that maybe the legislator or their staff will refer to and re-look at. We also encourage you to put an entire packet together so that the legislator can have that leave behind of the issue briefs, so the current bills that you would ask them to support, and also information about AFSP and all the ways that AFSP can partner with our legislators to do more for suicide prevention. Another action item would be, as we said, to contact your legislators via the AFSP Action Center. Chelsea did mention this, so I think we can just give you a little glance at that if you click there, Liz, for me. Okay, so when you go to that link, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be taken directly to the Public Policy Action Center. And you'll come down, you'll see New Jersey Virtual State Capitol Day, and you just click on Take Action. This is how easy it really is. It's a couple of clicks. You put your street address and zip code. So we're just going to do a little demo here for you. And that's going to take you directly to who your legislators are. You click on them, right? So you have your senator and you have your two assembly people, and there's a form letter, but you can also personalize it. So you can put something about yourself. If that's too much for you, you don't have to personalize it. The letter is fine on its own. You don't even have to fill in who the recipients are. This is going to do it for you. There's the letter. You click send and it will go directly to your legislator. So it's really, really easy. It takes literally seconds and you can really make an impact in this way. So I really encourage you to take this action step. The next is to become familiar with the New Jersey Legislature website. Again, we're going to show you a brief demo. We're going to send you a link to this website, but you can always Google the website and it'll come right up for you. But we're going to give you a demo because this really, I encourage you to go here, play around with it, and figure it out. You don't have to be embarrassed to say, you know what, I don't even know who my legislators are. Well, just go over to the left-hand side of the screen, find your legislator, click on it. You can figure out how you want to search it. I would recommend going by municipality. Click on that. And you find your town. So say I live in Aberdeen. So I'm going to click on Aberdeen, but you can find your own town. It's going to go right up to the top. It's going to tell you Aberdeen is District 13. And you would tells you what towns. You click on it and it's going to show you who your legislators are, who's your senator, who your assembly people are. Gives their contact information so you can get in touch with them that way. Now, if we go back to the home screen here, if you want to look for bills. So let's look for a bill number. So we're talking about a couple of bills here today. You could either find the bills going by the bill number, which you'll have in your issue brief, or supposing you didn't have an issue brief, if you go to keywords, click on it, and then just put the keyword in suicide and go to find, you're going to get all the bills that deal with suicide right there. And then you can look to, say you said, oh, this one looks interesting to me. Let me look at that. You click on it, it shows you who the sponsors are. And then if you want to read the bill in its entirety, you just click on the PDF format. And you can read the bill in its entirety. There you go. Usually just a couple pages. And again, if after reading the bill, you're not sure, you have questions about it, you can absolutely reach out to the Public Policy Office or Liz and I, and we can help connect you to try to get any questions answered that you might have. You want to engage your community by recruiting other advocates. Once you realize how easy this is, hopefully you'll talk to other people in your community, your family, your friends. Even if suicide prevention isn't their number one issue, when you see that it only takes seconds, a lot of times it's a lot easier to get people to join this fight with you and to come on as advocates and to take action. They'll get emails and they can take action in literally a matter of seconds. And then finally, I really encourage you to take advantage of social media by tagging us at AFSP New Jersey and also hashtag AFSP advocacy. Social media is really important, and it's a way to get our name out there and to get our issue out there. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Wendy. So I'd like to just close, as Wendy said, about our social media, but making sure that you will continue to stay connected with us. We're going to do our part to continue to stay connected with all of you. I know many of you have been receiving our emails in regards to our chapter sharing our mental health and COVID-19 resources during this time. We really are taking all efforts to stay engaged with you, to check in with you, and help give you the guidance and the resources and the tools to protect yourself and to protect your loved ones during this unprecedented time that we are going through. So please continue to follow us on our social media. If you'd like to get more involved with the New Jersey chapter, you can email myself. I'll be sending a follow-up email to our presentation today with more information. And of course, our website is afsp.org/New Jersey. I want to thank you again for joining us today and supporting the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in our New Jersey chapter. Our mission to save lives and to bring hope to those affected by suicide would not be possible without you. So thank you guys again. And now we're going to open it up for questions from the chat feature. So Wendy, this one could be a bit of a tough one given the times right now. And I'll ask maybe in your answer to, look at AFSP's stance on this. The question is, with suicide on the rise, why are gun shops open now and considered essential?
It's not an answer that I can give. I think it's definitely a very good question and something to be thinking about, because we know that over more than half of all suicides are via firearms. I do know that in New Jersey, we are very lucky to have very strong gun laws, but as we all know, that if we're on this call, not enough. So that's something that I would encourage you to let your legislators know, that this is really important. This is a problem. This is an issue, and that's certainly a conversation and a really, really good reason for you to get in touch. At AFSP, our stance is not to deal with taking guns away from people. It's about education, and we want people to understand that when it comes to suicide prevention, access to lethal means is critical. So it's really important that people understand what the issues are when it comes to gun safety and educating people. So I think what we really need to do is make sure our legislators know that we really need to educate and make people aware of what the facts are.
Thank you, Wendy. Someone writes about being concerned about people who live alone during this time. And I would just recommend, social distancing does not mean social disengagement. I feel like poor Wendy's probably so sick of hearing me say that comment, but it's so true. It's so important right now that while we practice social distancing, we don't practice social disengagement. Utilize technology to your availability during these times. Check in with people with calls, with FaceTime, with Zoom, just picking up the phone and making sure that you're staying connected with your loved ones, but also remember to check in with yourselves during these times and making sure that you're getting the self-care that you may need. Emotional support, pets could be a great thing for people who may have them. As far as being allowed to have a pet, I think that's something that they would have to look into on an individual basis.
And I think it is really, really important to be cognizant of what impact this pandemic is going to have on the mental health of everyone, right? This is a very, very trying time. So it is really, really important to put ourselves out there and to reach out and to make connections. I think when it comes to mental health, we know that one of the most important things is that we can have a purpose, that people feel that they have a purpose. And if our purpose is to reach out and to make connections and to let the people that we care about know the same thing, that if they reach out to you, let them know that means something. Boy, thank you for reaching out. Thanks for having this conversation for me. It really meant something to me. That's going to make them feel better too. It's not as simple as that when it comes to serious mental health issues. We know that, but we do know that it can help. This is a very, very complicated time, so we can only do as best that we can. But I also encourage you to reach out to resources and communities. Many of the communities I do work with, Bergen County, they're doing a great job of making sure that those populations who are isolated are still getting the resources that they need. They're getting food delivered or brought to them. So it is really important to make those connections and to give them the resources that exist in the community. So I would encourage you to go to the the behavioral health section of your town or your district's website and to find out what the resources are for people and share that with them.
Thank you, Wendy. We've got a question. Are there any bills being voted on soon that we should focus on when contacting our legislators? So I guess that could be a twofold question. How would we know if bills are being voted on soon?
So you can do that. We gave you the issue brief. So what you could do is if you go to the legislative website, you look at that bill and you will be able to follow. It'll tell you where the bill is in the process. If it's, if it was just passed, if there's a companion bill, if it's in committee and what committee it's in. So you can track all of that by going to that website. So I really encourage you, go there. Again, it's very, very user friendly and it's very easy. If you click on the bill, you want to know where it is, it will tell you exactly where that bill is right now.
Thank you, Wendy. We're getting a couple questions on the same subject matter, so I'm going to kind of combine them into one question. Have we seen a significant rise in suicide attempts? And I'll start by sharing, while we don't have numbers yet, I think as you can tell by the CDC data, we just were given, I think in January of this year, the 2018 data, so that does take time to collect. We are concerned. We are aware of what's going on. We are aware that there are many people out there who are losing their jobs. They're going to be going through financial difficulties. So we are concerned about the suicide rates, and we want to make sure that we're doing our part in sharing the resources that we have available, whether it's the mental health and COVID-19 resources or sharing the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and the crisis line as much as we can to help those individuals, continuing with our educational programming to help educate our community on the warning signs and the risk factors to look for in someone who may be struggling. So Wendy, would you have anything to add about that in the particularly with COVID-19 related and seeing a significant rise? And can we make some generalizations about particularly vulnerable populations?
So as Liz said, we don't have numbers yet, but we do know what our expectations are, and that is that we will see an increase because of the economics of it and people losing their jobs, because people are losing loved ones and family members and they're not getting support for that. So that's our expectation. I will tell you, with our youth population, we were off to a terrible start in New Jersey the first 2 months of the year, and we have seen that pull back a bit. We don't know exactly why, but we believe it's because the kids are home, they're having support, maybe some of their pressure level is down, doing virtual learning, and they're not out and about doing a lot of things. But again, we don't have any real facts or information on that. We just know what we're observing right now, what we can expect. So really what we want to do
is because of our expectations is we really want to make those connections. That's why we're making a real effort in holding virtual Talk Saves Lives in communities. And I really encourage you, if you have a way to bring that to your community, get in touch with your health department, see if they want to run it. We're running one through a stigma-free initiative up in Bergen County in a couple weeks. We've done a couple statewide ones. So I encourage people to take advantage of that, to understand what the supports are, and to share the crisis helpline. Let youth know about Second Floor Youth Helpline. That is not a crisis line. Kids can call that for any reason. If they're just feeling, look, this is overwhelming to me, being stuck in the house all the time. I'm sick of talking to my parents and my siblings. I just want to talk to somebody else. They can call Second Floor Youth Helpline. New Jersey, also, we have the helpline. We have Caring Contact. So give people these connections, ways for them to connect, to support without even having to leave the home. It is really important that we make the connections and keep educating.
Thanks, Wendy. In a similar format, and you may have just answered this, but I don't want to ignore someone's question. So from someone who works in a psychiatric emergency setting, they're finding it difficult to provide referrals to outpatient services given the current state of what's going on. Do you have any resources that you are aware of that they might be able to provide, specifically in Morris County?
So if I we'll make a connection. If you in the chat feature if you're comfortable providing your email to Liz, I'd like to connect with you on that. We know we're doing, there are a lot more telehealth options available. I would definitely go to the Morris County website. And I'd also be happy to try to help you connect to some of those resources, because yes, we know that is a huge problem, but many of the centers are starting to operate more with telehealth, and others of them are still continuing to operate on an outpatient setting because of the need. But it is a huge gap. It's a huge issue. But I'd be happy to see if I can help connect you to some resources in Morris County.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. I just provided this gentleman with your email address as well. Okay. Getting a few more questions in, so let me just scroll back up. I saw a bill presented in New Jersey providing suicide education to students. I find this to be a program that everyone needs to support. Okay, just a general statement. So thank you so much for your support on that. And yes, the crisis text line is 741-741.
And if I might add for that, thank you. I agree this is so important. So I really encourage you to take that next step. You agree that this legislation is important. Get in touch with your legislator and let them know, please vote for this bill. It's important to support it.
It looks like one question specifically for connections for people 60 and older during this time.
Again, the connections are, many of them are going to be the same. Many communities here in New Jersey are very, very aware of how isolated our over 60 population can be. So they are really working out of the box to provide resources. So I would encourage you to go to your county websites to find those resources, and also to your individual towns, because many of the towns are starting things to make sure that their populations are being connected with. Some of the towns I know in my area in Morris County have actually started some phone, just kind of getting phone chains going, having people call. A lot of our seniors, I'm getting near to 60, so I know that, but I know a lot, and I know Zoom and how to operate this, but a lot of people, 70s, 80s, they may not be able to do Zoom and FaceTime, but they will appreciate phone conversations. So it's important to go to your individual towns and your county websites to find out what they're doing for their senior population, and if there's anything that you can do to help. Can you be one of those people that's making a call, is sending a text, is making a connection and providing resources. But the resources really are going to come from the towns and the county. Nationally, AFSP is always a resource to go to the website. Any survivors of suicide loss, as we talked about earlier, we do have support groups, and I do know that many of the support groups have also gone virtual. So they're continuing to hold support groups for survivors of suicide loss virtually. So you can get that information by going to AFSP's website, looking for support groups, and then if you go to those individual support groups, the contact information, they'll be able to tell you if they're doing that work virtually, but very many of them have moved to that.
Thanks, Wendy. I've seen a couple things about the youth during this time, and a resource, not so much of a question, but it just made me think about one of the resources that we have through our partnership with the JED Foundation and the Ad Council. We have our Seize the Awkward campaign, which is targeted for youth 13 to 18. Don't hold me to that demographic. But a really wonderful social media campaign that engages with our youth and educates them on how to have that difficult conversation with a friend that you may be concerned about. So I'll send some more information out about that program. Again, it's called Seize the Awkward. But they have actually just, I think as of the end of last week, updated the website with even more specific graphics and information on how to have this difficult conversation during these times of a pandemic. So again, I'll share that in an email that will follow up to today's presentation, but I encourage everyone to take a look at that if you work with youth, if you have youth in your household, and really utilize the advice that they provide for that campaign.
And I think it's important for our youth is to really just be a listener. We can't fix this for our kids. This is hard. It's hard for everybody, and it's very easy for us as adults to kind of dismiss it. Oh, it's not that big a deal. You get to stay home. You get to sleep more and relax and play Xbox. I'm worrying about paying the bills, and I'm worrying. These are big problems. That's what we don't want to do. We really want to understand that this is big for our kids, and we want to encourage them to talk about what they're feeling. We want to try to peel back the layers and really get to what's going on inside and how they're feeling and coping, and know that we have to provide the model for them. We want to model the behavior that they want to see, that this is serious, this is scary, but it doesn't mean it's insurmountable, and it doesn't mean that we can't take personal action and find strength within ourselves to overcome, to get through this, and to do what's right. But we do need to let our kids feel what they're feeling. For all those kids who are seniors and they're not going to have their graduation, they're not going to have their proms, that's hard. It's hard and it's real. Don't dismiss it. Let them feel what they're feeling and encourage them to talk about their feelings. And then don't hesitate to provide them with those resources like Second Floor Youth Helpline, like a caring contact, the Suicide Prevention Crisis Text Line, and the Suicide Helpline, so that they have those resources and they can make use of those resources. And to not hesitate to have conversations about mental health and suicide. One of the greatest myths of suicide is talking about it will plant the seed. So it's okay to have these conversations with kids. Many people are struggling with their mental health at this time. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wendy. Well, that's all the questions that we've had in the chat feature. So while we wrap it up, I'll just give one more opportunity to, if you have any questions, please submit them through the chat feature. And again, just, thank you guys so much for joining us today. While we know you have so much other things going on, we're really happy that over at one point 51 of you joined us, and we're all here to learn more about the role that you can play in supporting AFSP and, to fight suicide and how you can help support your community. So we really are appreciative that, as I said earlier, we will, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. We will be emailing all of you with more information and follow up to today's presentation. We will continue. We will send you more on the issue briefs. We will send you more on the action items and the bills that you saw. We will send you a document on how to create your own personal vignette. Wendy, is there anything I'm forgetting?
No, just, we threw a lot of information at you and it could be overwhelming. So please know that we're here. If you want to set up an individual call and have a conversation, please, I'd love to have a conversation with you, talk a little bit more about advocacy. One of the things we really want to build here in the New Jersey chapter is advocacy and doing more work. So I'd love to get you involved. I was so excited to see so many people that signed on for this today, and I really want to keep that moving forward. So please don't let it stop here. Get in touch and let's do this.
Awesome. Thanks, Wendy. What a great way to end it. So again, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We're here to support you. Reach out at any time, and we look forward to being able to see you again in person someday soon. And again, thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.